All right, this is part 3, I believe, and I'm only about halfway. I'm eating right now, so that's that sound. So these numbers are characteristics of experiencing. Experiencing is a process of feeling. Experiencing occurs in the immediate present. Experiencing is a direct referent. Experiencing guides conceptualization. Experiencing is implicitly meaningful. Experiencing is a preconceptual organismic process. All right, so here we are. Experiencing is a preconceptual organismic process. I would like to distinguish implicit felt meaning from what is usually called unconscious or denied to awareness. Implicit meaning is often unconceptualized in awareness. However, the experiencing of the felt datum is conscious. Only because it is conscious can the client feel it, refer to it, talk about it, attempt to conceptualize it, and check the accuracy of his conceptualizations against it. The implicit meaning of experiencing is felt in awareness, although the many complex meanings of one such feeling may not have been conceptualized before. I think that's pretty straightforward. In some ways, anyway. I don't think he hasn't talked about unconscious and denied to awareness in this one, or is this the one that he quoted Freud? Oh yeah, right there. But he's talked about Freud's meaning of unconscious before, and how unconscious just straight up means something is not available to awareness. You don't notice it at all. You don't know that it's there. So that's not what experiencing is like. Even if you don't know the meaning of your felt sense, or you haven't found a handle for your felt sense, you haven't found a word for it, a concept for it, you're still very much aware of the felt sense, right? So the felt datum is conscious. It is there. So it's not either of those things. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The many implicit meanings of a moment's experiencing are not already conceptual and then repressed. Rather, we must consider these meanings to be preconceptual, aware, but as yet undifferentiated. So that's an interesting distinction. It's not that we understand what this felt sense is, and then we push it down and try to ignore it. But not successfully, since we can still feel it. It's more that we feel it, and the meaning, the significance of it, or what it means to us. I know I asked this on Twitter the other day because it was a question that I still have with Chenlin in general is what exactly he means by meaning. But I'm going to use it anyway, even though I don't know his precise definition. But even if we don't know the meaning or the significance of the felt sense that we're experiencing, that's because it hasn't been articulated yet at all. It's not that we have articulated it and are trying to not attend to it, it just has not yet been articulated. Preconceptual. Aware, so you can notice it, you know it's there, but as yet undifferentiated, so not undifferentiated, right? Like not pulled apart, not looked into more closely, not zoomed in on so that you can see the different factors and components and different meanings that exist within it. It's just a big felt sense that you don't know what to say about. Preconceptual events in the organism can have meaning because all organismic events occur in organized patterns of interaction in the biologic and interpersonal environment. In this way, as Harry Stack Sullivan points out, all human experience is symbolic. The complex organization of the organism is partly biologic and partly interpersonal. It exists at birth, but it is also modified by subsequent conditioning and learning. Thus, any event of the organism is symbolic of its organized interrelations with other events and processes of life and interaction. Hence, one such event can implicitly represent or mean many complex aspects of many other events. Hence, the directly felt data of present experiencing have implicit preconceptual meaning. I feel like I just got a little bit of an answer to my question about how he defines meaning. One way to describe it might be that meaning, there's meaning in something in as much as it symbolizes, right? Because he said any event of the organism. I mean, that's interesting. An event of the organism. He hasn't really used that phrase before, because he's not saying felt sense, he's saying organismic event. So anything that happens within the organism, I guess within awareness or not, is symbolic of its organized interrelations with other events and other processes of life and interaction, right? So anything that happens within my body, your body, it points to all the other relationships. Right, like my heart beats, right? And in a way, my heart beating symbolizes in as much as it connects to like all the other processes involved in my body related to that, like my blood flowing around, my veins, oxygen absorbing, whatever, it points to, or it represents all the rest of those processes and all the rest of those relationships within my body, just my single heartbeat. That's how I'm understanding that. Or like I'm eating right now. So I'm chewing. That event is tied to digestion, breaking down the food within me, absorbing nutrients, all these things, right? That's my understanding right now. So one such event can implicitly represent or mean, so there's the connection to meaning. So something means something in as much as it implicitly represents something. So the felt sense has meaning in that it implicitly represents all these other relationships and connections and organization within your life, within your body, within your social environment, right? Your whole life, everything around you, everything you're connected to, everything you're experiencing is represented implicitly within the felt sense. I wrote about this a little bit on Twitter not too long ago, about that idea of focusing as learning to listen for, God, it still sounds so corny. Learning to listen for what the universe wants to do next as it is expressed by you and your organism, right? So that's what the felt sense is. A felt sense implicitly represents everything else that's going on in the universe and never has gone on and is trying to move forward. So, the process of therapeutic changing involves this directly felt, implicitly meaningful organismic experiencing. In the therapeutic process, certain few differentiated meanings do play an important role. However, a vital role is played also by organismic processes, as these are, at any given moment, felt. They constitute a present inner datum, a direct referent. Change in therapy does not concern only those few conceptual meanings which the individual thinks or puts into words. Therapeutic change occurs as a result of a process in which implicit meanings are in awareness and are intensely felt, directly referred to, and changed without ever being put into words. Thus, the process of therapy involves experiencing. This last line is the powerful one. Therapeutic change occurs as a result of a process in which implicit meanings are in awareness and are intensely felt, directly referred to, and changed without ever being put into words. It's interesting that he ends it with without ever being put into words. That seems counter to the whole idea of, or at least the technique of focusing, of trying to symbolize those felt senses with words. But maybe he's saying here that the felt sense, it doesn't need to be put into words for therapeutic change to happen. It just needs to be an awareness, to be intensely felt, to be directly referred to. They're directly referred to. I wonder if that means just in awareness, or if he means something about the attempt to put words to it. Like, you don't have to ever accurately put it into words, because even the attempt changes the thing that you're referring to, right? Like, if I have a felt sense and I say, oh, it's this sort of like sad feeling in my chest. Like, even just that, even if it's not completely precise, can lead to the felt sense changing. So I wonder if he means that. The characteristics of experiencing, which I have mentioned, are: 1, experiencing is a process of feeling. 2, occurring in the immediate present. 3, clients can refer directly to experiencing. 4, informing conceptualizations. Clients are guided by experiencing. First rough conceptualizations can be checked against direct reference to experiencing. 5, experiencing has implicit meanings. And 6, these are preconceptual. Experiencing is a concrete, organismic process felt in awareness. Okay. So part 2, therapeutic responses. If it is true that therapists observe and talk about the function of what I'm calling experiencing in therapy, then this formulation of experiencing should help state the aim of therapeutic responses and should help explain how therapeutic responses achieve their aim. Let me attempt to discuss the aim and the effect of 2 kinds of therapeutic responses in terms of the function of experiencing in the therapy process. When he says responses, I'm guessing he means responses from the therapist. I will try to show that both client-centered responses and interpretations can be described in a way which makes them seem effective, or they can be described so as to seem ineffective. I will try to show that when therapeutic responses are said to be effective, it is because they are said to maximize the role of experiencing in the therapeutic process. Okay? Pretty straightforward. Client-centered responses are sometimes described as mere repetitions of what the client says. According to this description, the therapist adds nothing to what the client says. Such a description makes client-centered responses appear shallow. Client-centered therapists do not merely repeat, but since they also wish to emphasize that they do not interpret, it is difficult to formulate just what they really do. Applying what I've said about experiencing, I believe it would be true to say that a good client-centered response formulates the felt implicit meaning of the client's present experiencing. The client-centered response, at its best, formulates something which is not yet fully formulated or fully conceptualized. It formulates what the client is aware of, but not conceptually or verbally aware of. It formulates the meaning which the client has been trying to get at by various different verbalizations. In short, I believe that the optimal client-centered response attempts to refer to and to formulate the client's present felt experiencing. It therefore helps, it thereby helps the client formulate it and refer directly to it so that better and more differentiated conceptualizations can be worked for, and so that he can feel his present feeling more deeply and intensely. This is kind of funny to me, actually, articulating it like this, that since client-centered therapists kind of sound like they're just repeating what the client said, and they also make an effort to say that they don't do interpreting, then it's like, okay, well then what the fuck are you doing? It sounds like you're just saying the same shit back to the person. Like, how helpful can that be? But I think what Jenlin is saying here is that at its best, right, if the response is really done well, the client-centered therapist is basically giving the client an accurate handle, right? It's like, if you're focusing, you're trying to find a handle, find an accurate verbal symbolization of your felt experiencing. And that can be really hard. So the therapist, in this case, at their best, is listening to you and is so like dialed into what you're trying to express that they articulate it for you, and then you hear that as the client and you're like, that's it. And so now you're able to check back and then go even deeper into the felt sense that you're exploring, for it may change, right? Now that you've symbolized it, you experience a felt shift, and you can go a little bit further, a little bit deeper. There's a new murky edge, as John Lennon calls it. I have tried to contrast a shallow and inadequate description of the client-centered response with what I believe is an accurate description. This accurate description requires the notion of experiencing as an aware, felt, and implicitly meaningful direct referent. Let me attempt the same kind of contrast in the case of interpretation. A poor and shallow description of interpretation, I believe, would be that interpretation explains to the patient something of which he himself is unaware. He is unaware of the matter, presumably because his defenses make direct awareness impossible. Therefore, the patient can profit from such an interpretation only in an intellectual sense. The mere concept does not overcome the emotional defenses. Hence, the patient goes home with only a concept. Instead of helping the patient, the therapist leaves him to grapple with the emotions and defenses by himself. Right. So you explain what's going on for the client, but it doesn't connect with what the client is actually experiencing, what they're actually feeling in the moment. So maybe be like, oh yeah, okay, I have, whatever codependent issues with my girlfriend or something like that. Great. Now I have this theory, but I haven't dealt with the feelings at all. I haven't spent any time with the feelings. I haven't allowed the feelings to shift. I just have this intellectual theory now. Obviously, this describes interpretive therapy as it stood previous to Freud's discovery that intellectual insight is not enough. An effective interpretation must somehow help inner experiencing to which the interpretation refers. How does it help him to cope with the experiencing? Fenichel, in the psychoanalytic theory of the neurosis, says, since interpretation means helping something unconscious become conscious by naming it at the moment it is striving to break through, effective interpretations can be given only at one specific point, namely where the patient's immediate interest is momentarily centered. In other words, an effective interpretation is one which refers to just that datum on which the patient's interest is centered, or, as I would put it, an effective interpretation refers to the present experiencing to which the patient just now directly refers. Also, an effective interpretation names or tries to conceptualize the implicit meaning, which, although now being felt and now striving to break through, has not quite fully broken through yet. So, providing a interpretation is something that only works if it's done at the opportune moment. Right? There's something under the surface, something unconscious that is ready to come out. And at that moment, it's so close to the surface that the interpretation kind of like opens the door for it to move through and express itself. Right? I'm kind of like trying to paraphrase this. There's something unconscious that by being given an interpretation is made conscious or is allowed to become conscious. The interpretation helps this unconscious thing break through. So Jenlin is saying that thing is kind of like the meaning, the implicit meaning, which the client is trying to articulate, trying to get a handle of. And then the interpretation basically gives them that handle. And it allows for a felt shift to happen. I have tried to show that when therapeutic methods are oversimplified and criticized, they are usually portrayed just so as to omit experiencing. This makes them appear purely conceptual. Client-centered responses can be oversimplified as mere repetitions of the client's concepts. Interpretations can be oversimplified as mere intellectualizations. On the other hand, these responses are said to be effective when they are said to enhance the role of experiencing in the therapeutic process. They refer to the individual's present experiencing. They attempt to name accurately what he is aware of and feels, but has not fully conceptualized. They help the individual refer to a present inner datum which, although felt in awareness, is not conceptually known. Okay. So therapeutic methods are oversimplified and then criticized because they don't take into account the aspect of experiencing. Experiencing helps make those methods make sense. It shows how they actually work. So therapeutic responses are effective when they enhance the role of experiencing in the therapeutic process. So really that's the essential thing, is that the client is spending time with their present experiencing, attending to it, feeling it, directly referring to it. And even if you don't get the words correct, even just that allows it to shift. So when therapeutic responses, whether it's a repeating or whether it's an interpretation, when they help the client to do that, that's when they are effective. I believe that when these kinds of therapeutic responses achieve their aim, they are in practice quite similar to each other. Let me now try to describe such a response in words which do not belong to any one orientation. An effective therapeutic response refers to what the individual is now aware of. However, it does not refer simply to his words or thoughts. Rather, it refers to the present felt datum, his present experiencing. Presumably, the individual's words and gestures are attempts to express, imply, get at this present felt datum. The response will not always be able to state it accurately, but it can always refer to it. Even before it becomes clear just what the implicit meaning of a present experiencing is, both persons can refer to it. Both persons can call it this feeling, which is so-and-so, or this problem with your mother, or what you are trying to get at seems to be somewhat scary, or similar words which obviously refer to this in the individual, to which he now directly refers. An effective therapeutic response thus aims to refer directly and to help the individual refer directly to his present experiencing. Such a response aids him to feel this present experiencing more intensely, to grapple with it, face it, tolerate it, and work through it. Such a response helps him to put the implicit meaning of his experiencing into concepts which accurately state it. Okay. I think I think I can boil that down to saying, or pointing back to this line, right? An effective therapeutic response aims to refer directly or to help the individual refer directly to his present experiencing. So again, that's the essential thing, is directly referring to your present experiencing. Feeling, putting your awareness directly on the felt sense that you're experiencing now. You can do that yourself, and a therapist or whoever can help you continually refer directly to that experience. It is clear that the therapist's responses, when they refer to and name present experiencing, are not theoretical deductions about the client. Rather, they refer to an implicit meaning of which the client is now directly aware and which he communicates by implication. When responses refer to and name experiencing, they have depth, because what the client now feels is often much more than his words explicitly state. It is a kind of depth, all of which is in the client's awareness, but in a felt rather than a conceptual form. That was interesting. The communicates by implication. Well, I guess that's implication, implicit, the implicit meaning, right? The things that he's saying, the way that he sounds, his expression, his gestures, all of these things imply the meaning that is trying to be expressed. And if you're super attentive as the therapist or as the listener in that role, you can help. Well, you can notice that and just help the person refer directly to that thing that's trying to be expressed. And if you're super good, you might be able to articulate it for them accurately so that they can then be like, yes, that's it, and have a felt shift and move forward. And then there's this thing about depth. It's interesting. He doesn't really say that much. So the responses have depth. Like trying to picture this, they have depth in as much as they symbolize or they articulate something which goes deep within the person. I feel like I'm this kind of meta experience where I'm like, I feel like I understand what this means, but I can't express it. I can't express it fully. I have a felt sense of it. Like, if a therapist were to say to me, like, oh, you're sad, and that could be to a degree accurate, but if it's not really symbolizing the felt sense, then doesn't have depth. So it kind of gets at it, but it doesn't get at the full, like, nuance of all of the meaning that's implied. Yeah. I have tried to give a theoretical formulation of the role of experiencing in the process of therapy, and to show how this role of experiencing is implied in the aim of effective therapeutic responses. All right, final section. I am not gonna do that today. Next time.